Welcome to Nerd Vibes. I'm your host, Ray, aka Armed Dark Mambo. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Nerd Vibes podcast. This is our first video podcast of Nerd Vibes. It's going to be episode 7 overall, but first in video format. So I'm very happy to be here. Super nervous, not going to lie. Being first time being on video and having the podcast be in video is definitely crazy to me. But here we are. So we're going to do things a little bit different today for episode 7. We're going to be talking about some of the things in 2023 that I was really into, some of the things that I wasn't really into. This is going to be a mixed bag of a podcast. We're going to be talking about anime and comics on this one. And we're also going to be mixing in some of the new things that have been happening so far in 2024. So to start, we're going to hit what's been going on in the world of anime and comics right now. Okay. First thing I want to mention is going to be the Solo Leveling anime. It is out as of this recording. I've seen 2 episodes. I think episode 3 just dropped recently, or there have been like leaked images of the episode. So I'm very excited about that. I've been into it, been watching it. I have the manhwa, which, by the way, I learned it's not a manga because it's from Korea. They name their mangas manhwas, so it's a manhwa. It was a webtoon at some point. I never seen the webtoon, and now it has been adapted into an anime. And I must say, as a reader of the manhwa, it was my first one that I ever got in terms of manga, anything like that, was Solo Leveling. So to see this be animated was, excuse me if I yawn, okay? This is like I said, when I'm yawning and stuff on my audio podcast, I can just edit it out. Video, can't do it. But anyway, when I was reading the first volume of Solo Leveling and then it got announced that the anime was coming out, I was super hyped, super excited. And so far the anime has not disappointed. It's been very good. I feel like it's added a bunch to the lore and everything. There have been scenes in the first episode that were not in the volume 1 of the manhwa, which is really good. So spoilers for the anime, because we're going to be talking about it here in this section. The first scene that you see in the episode 1 is they're going onto an island where one of the dungeons has, I assume, they didn't really explain it, but I assume that the dungeon got overrun and the monsters have crossed over into our world. So you see the different guilds of the monster hunters and all these different things going and fighting these ants and having to fight the bosses and stuff. And there's where you start to see the difference in the levels of the hunters. Okay, the hunters are from A, B, C, D, E, and then S tier is the top. So you go S, A, B, C, D, E, A, E being the lowest. And our hero, or our main character, Jin Woo-sug, is the weakest hunter. He's an E-level, E-rank hunter. He's the weakest, and that's who we're following in this story. So I feel like so far the anime is doing a great job adapting the volume 1 of the manhwa. Like I said, we're 2 episodes in, and a lot has happened. It's been the animation is really good. The story is sticking pretty closely to the source material, which I appreciate, and it's number 1 trending in Japan, which is always really good. All right, for Solo Leveling to be received so well in Japan, it's just a testament to how good the story is, how good the animation is, and how good the anime itself has been so far. I have received a couple of comments on some of my social medias when I've been reacting to some clips saying people have said that the pacing is not going to be as good I feel like it's hard to say that 2 episodes in. And then some other people have had some issues with certain scenes that were really, really good in the manhwa, but not adapted totally well in their opinion. But again, as a reader, I feel like the manhwa to anime adaptation has just been phenomenal. And again, they've added scenes that we didn't see or we haven't seen in the manhwa that have provided a little bit more context and exposition to some of the things that are going on in the anime. So that's Solo Leveling so far. 2024 is been a big W, and definitely starting the year off right. Now, I want to get to this One Piece controversy that has been going on. I wanted to wait for the podcast to talk about it and give my thoughts, because I feel like my thoughts are a little bit hot takey. All right. So spoiler alert for anyone for the One Piece manga, and spoilers for the most recent episode of the One Piece anime. Okay. I'm going to give you a couple seconds to process what I'm about to say. Spoilers, again, for the One Piece manga and the most recent One Piece anime episode. All right. Now, the controversy has to do with our character, Jewelry Bonnie. Okay. When we're introduced to Jewelry Bonnie all the way back in Sabaody, she's introduced as one of the worst generation, along with Luffy, Zoro, Kid, Killer, Law, all the characters we know. Okay. So we meet Jewelry Bonnie in this most recent episode of One Piece. She's saved by Jinbei, Luffy, and Chopper, who are all together. They wash up on what is now known as Egghead Island when they get there. And as they're, recovering from being rescued, everyone's having their clothes off. They're all wet. So they're all wringing their clothes out. Okay. Jewelry Bonnie has no shirt on, and her boobs are out. Okay. And it was a very hot button moment in the anime. People were going crazy because they showed a lot in the anime. Okay. Now, the problem is people who have read the manga know that this character, Jewelry Bonnie, in the manga is actually 12 years old. So the issue was they were sexualizing what is in the manga known as a 12-year-old. So that's kind of an issue. Okay. But it gets complicated because our character, Jewelry Bonnie, has the devil fruit, or the power called the age fruit, where she's able to change her appearance and age up her appearance, either younger or older. We've seen when she was in Mary Joie, she aged herself up to an older, much older version of herself, grandma age, so to speak. And we've seen in other instances, she's aged other characters way down to kids. So she's used her powers on other people. But when she uses her powers on herself, she's aged up to a more adult age. We don't know what age she ages herself up to, but it looks to be an adult age when we see her in the anime in this episode. Okay. So the controversy is people were saying that this is, child. It's just weird, basically, that it's a weird situation that we found ourselves in with this character. People were sexualizing her and all these things, but, anime only people don't know that this character is 12 years old. They think that Jewelry Bonnie is an older character. You know what I mean? People who have read the manga know that Jewelry Bonnie is 12. Okay. And a couple of things I want to say about this. In the anime, a lot of the characters are sexualized, and that's just kind of what it is. Anime in general, characters are sexualized. That's just kind of what it is. That's why we have a whole term of waifus and that whole deal. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, this is a culture thing. Okay. In Western culture, we don't understand, or we don't look at children or sexualize. We don't sexualize children in the Western world. Okay. In Japan, I'm not going to speak for their culture, but it is different. It's a different culture. This manga, this anime was made by a Japanese person, presumably for the Japanese culture, and the popularity has spread to the Western world. Okay. So this is a culture issue. And unfortunately, it has caused some stir in the One Piece community and the anime community in general. And I feel my thoughts on it is no, it's not. It's not for me. I don't generally sexualize characters in anime one way or the other, whether they're kids or not. I do have anime characters that I love, but I don't love them because they're sexy or whatever it is. I love them because of what they do. In One Piece in particular, my favorite female character is Nico Robin. I love Nico Robin because her devil fruit is amazing. She's super strong as a combatant, which I enjoy. And if you watch the Wano arc, she got a new transformation, the demon form, and I loved it. I love Nico Robin. I don't like Nami because Nami is not a strong combatant. She does what she does for the Straw Hats, but in general, she's not very good as a character, and that's just me. I don't really sexualize the characters like that, but it would be ridiculous to say that you don't notice the assets that the animators have given certain characters. It is what it is. It's in your face. And some other examples of that is like in Attack on Titan. I love Mikasa, however you say it. That's my favorite character. And it's because she's a strong female character who is an elite combatant. A lot of my other female characters that I like have that in common, that they're strong combatants. I like my female characters to be on par with some of the male characters in terms of their combat ability. I don't necessarily like characters because of their sexualization, if that's a word. So this kind of controversy went over my head a little bit, to be honest, because I didn't really see it as a thing. I just, in the anime, when I was watching it, I was like, oh, that's weird. They're really going for the shot there. And, it is what it is. To me, when you watch anime and when you're into that world, you have to understand that there's a certain level of fan service that goes along with it. There was a certain controversy with One Piece in the Wano arc when we had Yamato. Yamato is portrayed as a female character. She has all the female parts, so to speak. So she has big anime boobs. Normally, it's what happens. But Yamato, the character, identifies as male. So people had a huge problem with that. And it was a controversy in the community because Yamato at one point was sexualized until Yamato identified as a male. And there was a scene in the anime, the One Piece anime and in the manga, where at the end of Wano, the Straw Hats are going to take baths in their separate bathhouses. And Yamato goes and takes a bath with the male characters. So Yamato, female character who identifies as male, went to take a bath with the male characters. Was they in there with Zoro, Sanji, Luffy, Brook, Chopper, all them was in the same bathhouse as them. And the reaction from the male characters was what you thought it would be. Luffy didn't care. Zoro didn't care. Brook and Sanji went absolutely bananas because that's their characters. And Chopper was just Chopper, but it was a little bit of a controversy, but people got over it. And that's not something that people talk about now. So I feel like with this Jewelry Bonnie situation, it was a shock in the anime to see what we saw in that scene. But at the same time, I know that when I'm watching anime, I sign up for a certain level of fan service, and I kind of just move past it. It does complicate things that in the manga, we find out later on, it is much later. Okay. Much later that we find out that Jewelry Bonnie is actually 12 years old. So for the anime only people who don't know the true nature of Jewelry Bonnie's age, I don't find this to be a problem because you're basically ignorant to the situation. Okay. And for people who do know that Jewelry Bonnie was 12 years old and was actually sexualizing her in a way that is maybe inappropriate. That's what the medium presented to us. To the medium itself, the anime itself presented Jewelry Bonnie in a sexualized way because she was aged up at that point. So yes, I don't personally think that there was a problem with that scene because of the anime scene in general being over sexualized sometimes with characters and with, different things. But I do understand why people had an issue with that. I do give a little bit more grace to my anime only people because, again, you don't know. You just don't. So you're ignorant to the situation. And overall, I think it's just weird to over sexualize animated characters in the first place. But that's a different conversation for another day. But I did want to touch on that because it is kind of something that's controversial that's going on in the community right now. And I wanted to touch on it. But overall, I really don't see the issue. We have differences in culture. And again, there are ways that you can look at it to where it's not that big of a deal, And if you want to make that a big deal and have that be the hill that you die on, by all means, do you. No judgment over here. Okay. But just wanted to throw my 2 cents in on that. Okay. So we talked about Solo Leveling. We talked about One Piece. Those are our anime entries. We're now going to talk about the most relevant comic book story right now, which is the mixed reviews on the show Echo from Disney Plus. If you're not sure who Echo is, what Echo is, I'm going to explain it to you right now. Echo is a superhero from the Marvel Universe who has power, who's deaf. Let's just start there. She is deaf. And her power is she can see anything that someone does and is able to copy it. Similar to Taskmaster, if you know who that is, but Taskmaster has a way higher level of that ability. So the show is also named Echo in the MCU, and the show started out with problems. Okay. Marvel advertised this show as a Marvel Spotlight, which in their words, they said that this is a standalone show that doesn't have really any ties to any other previous MCU products. The problem with that is that the first episode was basically half of a recap of who Echo is, how we met Echo, how we got there. And a lot of that has to do with another MCU property, Hawkeye, which is exactly what Marvel said that they weren't doing. They weren't tying it into any other MCU properties. So immediately off of episode 1, they went back on that. The other thing that this show has done is it's tried to mimic some of the Netflix Marvel shows, which were a little bit darker, a little bit more gritty, had a little bit more blood and things of that nature, which is definitely a switch up from Disney Plus, because Disney Plus is, again, Disney properties and they deal with sunshines and rainbows and all these things. So they don't really go into the darker areas of some of these comic book shows. So that was kind of an issue that was there. The other thing is there was supposedly a lot of issues with production, post-production, the story changing around, and a lot of fans felt like this show was very disjointed, was very stop and start in terms of some of the storytelling aspects, some of the themes and everything like that. So overall, the show was mid. It was very mid. And that's unfortunate because the character of Echo is great in theory, but the execution was not good at all. This was a good character in terms of representation. This character was deaf or is deaf, and this version of Echo is also missing a leg. So it showed representation for people with disabilities, which is great because everyone wants to be able to see themselves in the heroes that they watch. And for Echo to be received in a way that wasn't necessarily what Marvel was looking for was unfortunate. And the advertising that they had didn't go with what was presented on screen. In episode 1, I believe Daredevil makes an appearance when they said that this was going to be a standalone story. So why are you having crossovers in episode 1? You know, Kingpin is heavily tied into Echo's story, so that makes sense that he would be there. But it doesn't make sense to have Daredevil there. It doesn't make sense to do the whole recap of what happened in Hawkeye for a show that's supposed to be a standalone situation that's supposed to be Echo by herself doing the thing, whatever that thing is. So it just didn't make sense from the beginning. There are the action scenes in there are more similar to what we saw in the Daredevil Netflix show, which is a lot of blood, a lot of kind of brutality in terms of the fighting, which I enjoy personally because it makes more sense for these characters to be a little bit more aggressive and brutal in terms of their fighting styles because of the types of people that they're going against. I never liked it when you would see a character, punch somebody and there's no blood. Like it makes no sense to me. If I'm a enhanced individual or superpowered individual going against a non-enhanced or superpowered individual, my punches are going to be a lot harder than that other person. So I feel like to properly depict the strength difference and everything like that and technique and all that kind of stuff, you do need that level of brutality and special effects and all that stuff to show that what I'm doing is actually doing damage to these people. So I did like that. I was a fan of the Netflix shows, not including Iron Fist. But Luke Cage was really good. Jessica Jones was really good. Daredevil was really good. I would say the first season of Iron Fist was okay. But everything after that was terrible. And for them to actually be bringing those characters into the new MCU is really, really good. I don't know if they're going to bring all those characters, but so far we have Daredevil and Kingpin from the Netflix shows into the MCU, which is really good. I'm hoping that Luke Cage will be back. I'm hoping Jessica Jones will be back. And I'm hoping Danny Rand, the character, would be back, not necessarily the actor who played Danny Rand. Because I'm more of a fan of the street level comic book heroes, Luke Cage in Harlem. You got Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen, Danny Rand when he links up with Luke Cage and they form, I forget what their Heroes for Hire, that team. I'm not super familiar with Jessica Jones outside of the show, but the show, again, I loved it. I loved the show. It was very good. And for them to kind of be starting to fold those characters into the MCU is really good. And also leaning into the directorial choices of those shows where they're being a little bit more darker, a little bit more gritty, and like I said, a little bit more brutal in terms of the fighting and the action scenes and things of that nature. I was very excited about. But this show, Echo, fell short in so many different places. The storytelling, again, was disjointed. There was some very high moments for Echo. I think some of the her relationship with Kingpin in the show was hit or miss at times. The action scenes were pretty good, again, like I said. And then the parts where she goes home and is dealing with her family and has those interpersonal connections with her family, those are, for me, primetime moments. But again, a lot of the story was disjointed and not cohesive, so it fell kind of short. And it's unfortunate because the MCU doesn't have a good track record when it comes to TV shows at this point. There really hasn't been a really good TV show outside of Loki. Loki season 1 and season 2 were really, really good, but you have Hawkeye, which was okay. You have what are some of the other? I don't even know. Secret Invasion. I didn't even watch it. Like, people said it was so bad, I didn't even watch it. But it just, the shows that Marvel has put out have not been good, and it's unfortunate, especially for this hero in particular, when she was supposed to represent so many people with disabilities. And it could have been a great show, but it just ended up not being that at all. And it's unfortunate that the show was just mid. So we're going to take a break. And then when we come back from the break, we are going to be talking about our anime from 2023, what I enjoyed, what I didn't like, and some recommendations going forward. So I'll see you guys on the other side of this break. All right, we are back. Okay, and now in this segment, we're going to talk about the anime that was good, bad, mid, that I watched in 2023. This is all going to be stuff that I watched. Okay, I'm not going to talk about anything that I didn't watch, because I don't feel it's right to give my opinion on something that I didn't see personally. Okay? So the first thing we're going to talk about, obviously we touched on it in the intro, in the news section, but the Wano arc of One Piece. I watched it. The whole thing was fantastic. Okay? Some of the things in the Wano arc that I enjoyed, in particular, spoilers, my bad. Spoilers, if you haven't seen the Wano arc of One Piece, okay? Or read it, whatever. Spoilers ahead for that. Spoilers for anything I talk about. If you haven't seen it, I don't know. I'm just going to give a blanket spoiler for the episode. I'm going to spoil everything I talk about, whatever. So One Piece, the Wano arc, it had some of the best animation of 2023. Okay. I just want to put that out there again. And let me say it one more time. Some of the best animation in all 2023. Okay. Wano arc of One Piece gave us so many moments, especially towards the end. But I'll get into that. But let's just take it from the top. Okay. In the beginning of the Wano arc, and I'm including the Wano arc as a whole. I believe some of it was in the end of 2022, but Wano definitely dominated 2023 for sure. But in the beginning, we got a lot of, it was a little bit slow moving until we got to Onigashima and that whole, the war arc, I would say, part of Wano. But the times that they were spending in the different like villages and doing different stuff with Tama and, recruiting all the samurai and getting all the, I can't remember what the Akuza, I think, was what they called themselves. But like Ashura Doji, and then getting I can't remember any of their names right now. Getting what's the frog guy's name out of the prison. Luffy training with his Ryo while he was in the prison with Kid. So all those things I believe were a little bit more slow moving. They had moments, but with Wano didn't really turn up until we got to Onigashima. And when we got to Onigashima, that's when we got all the moments, just so many. It felt like every week was a different Straw Hat highlight. We got Frankie's fight, which was fun and ridiculous, but it's a Frankie fight. This is what happens. Jinbei's fight against Who's Who provided the most exposition in terms of like background stuff to fill in the gaps of the story, like the gum gum fruit, who stole it, Shanks. How Shanks stole it, how Who's Who was once a CP agent and now became a one of the Toby Roppo for Kaido, how that happened, and how Shanks stealing the fruit impacted him and why he was there. We got some more exposition on Shanks in Wano, like a little bit. So we got a little bit of teaser for Shanks in Wano. But the Jinbei Who's Who's fight, it was more than a fight. And it was more, every time that they were on the screen, it was more of an information download, which I enjoy. I enjoy information downloads in the episodes of anime just because it gives me more context, especially since for the most part, I don't read a lot of manga. Let me see who else. The Robin fight, we talked about that earlier, where she went demon mode on Black Maria. And that was a very good fight in general. Character development for Sanji, character development for Robin in that situation. Sanji, with his mandate to not hit women, was put in a situation against Black Maria and some of her cohorts where he was surrounded by women. He doesn't hit women. And so for him to be captured and beaten and all that stuff, and to call out to Nico Robin for help, was character development for him, because he actually called on someone for help when he usually doesn't. See Whole Cake Island, and him doing that whole Cake Island was simply because he didn't want to put the Straw Hats in danger and didn't want to ask them for help. So Whole Cake happened all because of that. So that's a character development moment for Sanji. And then the character development moment for Robin was her showing that you can call on me. I'm not just another one of the Straw Hats who's not a combatant. I can hold my own in these fights. I can do what I need to do to help you out and be there for you. So it was Sanji calling on Robin was a character development for both of them, because it gave Robin the confidence to do what she needed to do to move forward in that fight and become stronger for the Straw Hats. And it was Sanji's character moment calling on help when in a previous arc, he didn't call them for help. Okay. And then obviously that gave us one of the best moments was Robin using her demon form. She took the demon child moniker and made it a reality and turned into a demon. Like I said, Robin, one of my favorite girls in One Piece. Totally, totally amazing. And then we get to the big three, the monster trio. Okay, Chopper had his moments, whatever, he was doing the thing. Nami and Usopp were just running around with Tama doing their thing. So they didn't really have like moments. They had different kind of moments, I guess, where they're doing their thing, but they're not really combatants in the way that we look at the other members of the crew. But if you know me, Monster Trio and the moments that they had. We got Blue Flame Sanji, where that was the most character development I feel from any character in Wano was Sanji. coming to the realization that he is his father's son in terms of all the enhancements and everything that he wanted all his children to go through that Sanji didn't think he had, but that he kept his emotions. There was a moment in there where we find out later that Queen hit a woman, but Sanji was in such a daze in where he was at in his mindset, going through the changes that his body was going through, that he thought he hit the woman, and that sent him in a little bit of a tailspin. And we found out later that he didn't do that. And so for him having that type of identity crisis, where he literally goes to Zoro and tells Zoro, hey man, if I'm acting different, if I'm not in my right mind, you gotta take me out. And of course, Zoro, in the normal Zoro fashion, was like, of course I'll take you out. Super easy, no problem. But so we get ton of character development from Sanji in the Wano arc, specifically when he's fighting Queen. And, we see Queen fight, which I feel is hilarious every time I saw it. Just Queen is a ridiculous character. And then Sanji to power up to have the blue flames and all that stuff, and just hit Queen with the most amazing and beautiful Diablo Jambe was peak. It was beautifully animated. The story around it, the culmination of all his emotions and where he was at as a character going into that fight with Queen, and to have the payoff like that was just top tier. Okay. And then we move on to my favorite moment of Wano, my favorite character, Zoro becoming the king of hell and beating King in the way that he beat King was just absolutely amazing. The animation style, the story behind it, where, Zoro generally overpowers his opponents. Whereas with King, he had to figure out, my blades can't cut him. How do I beat him with my blades that can't cut him? And for him to, in real time, figure out, okay, this is King's strategy. This is what's happening with his Lunarian DNA and what's going on with his situation, and how he's invulnerable at times to Zoro's blade attacks. For him to figure that out and then beat King in the way that he beat King, becoming the king of hell. It's a great scene at the end. I'm gonna probably have to put it up in here somewhere, where he's king of hell Zoro, and that's just it. And all while being on this drug that makes him not have any injuries or anything like that. And as soon as the fight's over, he's on the brink of death. We still do not know what that was at the end of that fight, with the Grim Reaper showing up and that whole scene. I have no idea what that meant. No idea. People were speculating it was the embodiment of Enma. People were insinuating that it was a spirit from hell because he declared himself the king of hell. There are a bunch of theories out there. That's theory corner for another day. And then we have the Luffy versus Kaido fight. Okay. Luffy gets character development a little bit here, where he's going against Kaido, fighting against Kaido on equal terms for the most part. And then Kaido takes him out, or seemingly takes him out. Kaido announces to Onigashima, hey, I won. Luffy's dead. This is over. All right. Luffy comes back. Here's the drums of liberation, gets his heartbeat going again, goes Gear 5th. Okay. Gear 5th was a very hyped time for Wano. I think that the Sanji moment and the Zoro moment outshined Gear 5th, in my opinion. But that's because I'm biased on that, because Sanji and Zoro and Sanji and Zoro are my 1A, 1B favorite characters in One Piece, and Luffy's right there, right after them. So Gear 5th was really fun. You got, quote unquote, the Toon Force. He's jump roping Kaido, turned into a giant, throwing lightning, doing all this stuff. And that was just amazing. And then to finish off Wano, after all the major fighting is done, Big Mom is taken out by Kid in Law, that was another hype moment in that. It wasn't as hype because I'm not fully invested in those characters, but it was a hype moment, taking out Big Mom, taking out a Yonko. And then you had, after all of that happened, Big Mom's out, Kaido's out. Then you had an Admiral pull up, and you have Momo, who's aged up now. He's an adult. You have all the samurai trying to fight this Admiral. You had Yamato trying to fight this Admiral. Only for Shanks. Okay? Red hair Shanks. Everyone's been waiting to see Shanks. What is he going to do? When's he going to make his move? And he hits this Admiral with the teleportation Conqueror's Haki from across the ocean and just hits him with it and tells him, hey, back up. You don't want the smoke. And he leaves. And that's pretty much the end of Wano right there. So you have that whole arc of One Piece just being top tier in terms of the animation, the storytelling, the moments, and we also got to see some characters that we haven't seen in a very, very, very long time. And a new character in terms of the Admiral Green Bull in action. Like I said, we got to see Shanks, Ben Beckman, Yasop, anyone on Shanks's crew. We got to see them. And it was very nice at the end of Wano to see Luffy, Zoro, Sanji. I think Jinbei was there too. Just sitting on the hill watching Momo and the samurai and Yamato try to fight Green Bull and just be like, hey, they got it. Like, we're done. We did our part. They got to do this now, So that was One Piece for 2023. I think it dominated the year, per the usual, but that's One Piece, and it's gonna dominate because it's the greatest story ever told. Don't let anyone ever tell you different. Okay. Now I want to get to something that was kind of mid, in my opinion. Okay, and that's going to be Demon Slayer, the Swordsmith Village arc. I thought it was mid. It was just okay. The animation is going to be what the animation is. It's always beautiful. It's always going to be that top tier, top level. But I think when you compare the Swordsmith Village arc to the previous arc, which is the Entertainment District with Tengen, it just kind of fell short. It wasn't as hype. The demons that they were fighting in that arc wasn't. I never felt really threatened in that situation, so I thought it was it kind of fell flat in terms of the demons that they were fighting. I did enjoy the Mist Hashira, but he was very stoic, so it was very difficult to get into his character and to kind of care about that character. We did have Tanjiro, but Tanjiro, for the most part, if I remember correctly, was not really in too much until towards the end. And then when you get him towards the end of the Swordsmith Village arc and you have Nezuko and that whole situation where they're trying to fight the one demon that can split into 5 and then, all that kind of stuff. I feel like it was kind of just a lame way to end the Swordsmith Village arc. I feel like it should have been a little bit more hype than that. And so that season kind of fell flat for me. Outside of the animation, I don't think that the storytelling was anything to write home about. It's very pretty standard story. You go to a place, you train, you fight the guy, or the guys or whatever. And then that was kind of the whole arc, to be honest. Not to say that it wasn't good, but I feel like it could have been better. I feel like maybe there was things missing. Again, I don't read the manga, but I felt like there were some things missing in terms of context, in terms of character development for other characters. You did get Nezuko at the end of the arc where she's able to withstand the sun, which was a more of a development for her powers and not necessarily for her. So there's that. But like I said, this season left me kind of like it was okay. Like it was okay. You know, like I said, I was more hyped for the Entertainment District arc than I was for Swordsmith Village. But that could be more so because I enjoyed Tengen's character more than I enjoyed the Mist Hashira. I don't even know his name. I should know his name. But, you know, so I just enjoyed Tengen more so than I did the Mist Hashira. Let me look up his name real quick while I'm talking to you guys. And then one thing I do want to know, or want to let you guys know, you guys, oh, okay. This is something I learned later, okay? But all the effects and stuff that you guys see on their swords. So, for instance, when Tanjiro's doing the sun breathing and you see all the fire, or he's doing the water breathing and you see the water come out of the sword, that's an effect for the anime. So that it's like you guys can see that. But like, if I could like try to say it, in real life or in their world, like the demons aren't seeing the water coming out of the sword. They're just seeing the sword, if that makes sense. So the, you know, elemental effects that are coming with these sword slashes and stuff like that are not what the demons are seeing. And that's something that I learned, you know, kind of just out there. But that's, hey, it makes the anime look more beautiful. The Mist Hashira's name is Mauricio Tokito. But yeah, I didn't connect with him as a character enough to remember his name. And that's kind of how I felt about the Swordsmith Village arc. There was not too much to remember about it other than the animation looked good and it progressed the story. Other than that, I mean, there was a few moments here and there, but I didn't really vibe with it. And now we're gonna get to one that I just didn't like at all, and that's gonna be Trigun Stampede. I've talked about it before. I started Trigun Stampede, finished up in early 2023. I believe it started at the end of 2022 and went into 2023, but I just didn't vibe with it. I didn't think it was good. The animation style, they did a 3D kind of animation style. It was tough to watch at times. They changed the story up from the 1998 version, I believe, or late 90s version of Trigun. There was a character in the 1990s version Trigun that I really vibe with, which was Millie. She provided the comic relief and the leverage to take tension out of these serious situations. And I felt like season 1 was definitely lacking in that. In Trigun Stampede, the lack of a comedic presence to take away some of the tension, because season 1 of Trigun Stampede was a very tension filled season. And there was a lot of, you know, just times where a well-placed joke or a, you know, goofy sort of situation would have cut that tension and, you know, made it a little bit less stressful of a watch and of a situation in the story. So I was definitely missing that character of Millie in that. And, one of the other things is they revealed very early that there was a relationship between Vash and Knives, whereas in the 90s version, you don't realize that they're brothers until kind of the very end of the series. And then it, progresses from there. Whereas in Trigun Stampede, you learn, I believe it's episode 1 or 2, that they're brothers. And I feel like that was a huge reveal that kind of, I get why they did it in terms of setting up the relationship and why Knives is constantly going after Vash. But I just felt in the 90s version that it was better to hold that until the very end, especially when Vash is known as the humanoid typhoon, the whole 90s version. And he's going around to these different towns and devastation follows him. And you just don't understand why. And in the Stampede version, you understand that it's because his brother is sending people after him constantly and that he is reluctantly protecting himself. And because he's so powerful, these devastating things happen. So there was a lot about Trigun Stampede that I didn't like, especially when it's a cast of characters that I truly enjoyed in the late 90s version. So that was very, very, very disappointing to me as a fan of Trigun. And I'm hoping that season 2 brings Millie in, and hopefully that progression of the story goes a little bit better than it did in season 1. But as of now, Trigun Stampede was a kind of a miss for me. I'm going to go through these last ones very quickly because I wanted to touch on those, but I wanted to go through these last ones pretty quickly and say some of the ones that I did like. Hell's Paradise. It's a new anime manga. I do have the manga. I have the first couple of volumes of Hell's Paradise. I felt like that was a really, really good one. The art style in that was amazing. The story was super, super unique and very, very refreshing to watch as an anime watcher. It's very easy to find anime that are pretty similar in terms of you have a main character, they're the guy, they have all the powers and all that kind of stuff. But Hell's Paradise was very different in terms of power sets, the story in terms of what they have to do, the main character's motivations, and all of those things. Some of the side characters, we don't spend enough time with them in the side characters as much in the anime as you do in the manga, but the side characters I feel are developing very well. So I'm very excited for season 2 of Hell's Paradise. Rising of the Shield Hero, season 3, just finished up at the end of 2023. This one, I was very, very surprised that it was such a good season, especially coming off of season 2. The Spirit Turtle arc was not well received by fans, me included. I watched the whole season and I just thought it was so disjointed and convoluted what they were doing in season 2 that it was nice in season 3 that the story was more contained. They didn't really have a big bad, so to speak, in season 3 to kind of build up to. It was more of our main character, Naofumi, the shield hero, going around and collecting the other 3 cardinal heroes, the sword, the spear, and the bow hero, to get them all on the same page so that they can face the big bad going forward. There's a lot of character development from Naofumi, Raftalia. We got introduced to more characters in Naofumi's squad and his little town that he's protecting. So that was really good. And I feel like the self-contained story of Naofumi just trying to go around and build his team back up was very good, as opposed to the second season of Shield Hero. So season 3, definitely a W. I'm waiting for either the second half of season 3, if they do that, or season 4 to continue up our story. But season 3 was definitely really, really good. And then finally, last thing I want to talk about, the Attack on Titan finale. Okay, it's finally over. This anime is probably one of the greatest stories in anime. It was really, really well done. The twists and the turns, everything in AOT is top tier. The thing that I didn't like about it was how the final season was broken up into so many different parts. But that's really the only thing bad that I can say about it. Other than that, I like the resolution of, they stopped the rumbling, but still 80% of the population was dead. You got Mikasa, who actually kills Eren, which is, what needed to be done. And, she buries him next to his favorite tree and all that kind of stuff, which was good. And then we see the passage of time and how Eren's actions didn't necessarily do what he thought it was going to do. There was still war. There was still fighting and stuff long after he was dead. We got resolutions for everybody else. And it was just really, really good. So, but the one thing, like I said, I wish we didn't have to wait that long. They could have dropped it 2022, 2021, ridiculous that they made us wait for so long. But it was amazing. Top tier animation, top tier storytelling, the twists and the turns, everything was great about the AOT finale. And yeah, that's kind of the anime that I watched in 2023, what I thought about it. So we're going to take a break here. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about the disappointing year in the comic book space. Okay. Anime definitely took over the year 2023, and comic book content media definitely took a step back. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about comic book media and where it's at, because it's in a sad state right now. So see you guys on the other side of this break. All right, so we're back, and our third segment is going to be on the comics, live action, animation, all that kind of stuff that happened in 2023. This is going to be a shorter segment because there wasn't a lot of good stuff, but the stuff that was good to great. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, Across the Spider-Verse. If you saw it, everybody knows how good it was. The animation style, the storyline, the themes in there where, one of the most iconic lines, Miles saying, "Nah, I'm going to do my own thing." Everybody knows that it was amazing. It was great. And so Across the Spider-Verse was amazing. My nephew is super into Miles Morales, unfortunately. Just that movie broke so many different barriers in terms of the animation, the representation of the different spider people. We got, the Indian Spider-Man was in there, which was very, very well done from people in that community. Said that they got a lot right about the culture and things of that nature. The relationship between Miles and his mom was very good. I wish we would have got more of the family situation in the movie than we did, but again, it was very good. The villain, Spot, turned out to be a really, really good villain that led into more of the overall story. So they did that very well. I've seen some behind the scenes where they had different designs for Spot, and the design that they went with was absolutely amazing. So I'm just, like I said, we're going to keep it quick because everybody knows about Spider-Verse. Blue Beetle, we talked about on a previous podcast, so I'm going to keep that short. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie. The suit was comic book accurate. The family was fun. The villains were okay. But that's a DC property. And I thought that worked very well as a movie. That one Blue Beetle, the character, will carry on to the next iteration of the DCEU from what everyone has been saying. So that's really good because I felt like Blue Beetle out of the DCEU, it being the final year of that whole debacle, was one of the bright spots of that. And so I'm glad that he's going to be going forward as a character. Let's move on to another movie. We're going to stay on movies and then we're going to go to series after this. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was really, really good. It was tough to watch in certain points if you're an animal lover because of some of the things that happen in the movie. Rocket, it's Rocket's origin story, essentially. You get to see the high evolutionary and how he would go through these experiments and try to make a higher intellectual life form from animals. And Rocket was the success story of that. But his friends, who were also animals that were being experimented on in different ways, were eventually killed in that movie. So it was very sad. So especially if you're an animal lover, that might have been a tough watch for you. But the relationships with Star-Lord and Gamora, especially after the events of Endgame, where we get this Gamora is a different version of the Gamora that Star-Lord knew, so that there's a repairing of the relationship there, which ultimately doesn't come to fruition. Gamora is now the leader of the Ravagers, which was a huge surprise to me. Nebula is a member of the Guardians and a very valued member of the Guardians at this point. And then you have Drax and Mantis with their relationship. But at the end of the movie, it is the last installation of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So at the end of the movie, they all, decide to go their separate ways and do their own thing. But that movie was really good. It was a good send-off for the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. And again, if you were an animal lover, it might have been tough for you to watch. But overall, a great movie. I do recommend it. But because there's not much else in the MCU was very good this year. Which brings me to Loki, Season 2. I also talked about Loki on a previous podcast, so this is going to be a quick one. But Loki in Season 2 had amazing character moments for Loki, for Sylvie, for I can't remember, the other people's names. Loki, Sylvie. I'm just blanking on the cast members' names right now. But those two had amazing character development, particularly Loki towards the end of the season, where he's, doing the time loop, trying to figure out how to stop He Who Remains and breaking the loom and fixing the loom and all these different things. So that was just an amazing season of television. Tom Hiddleston is an amazing actor for Loki, and I felt like that was the best way to wrap up his character, with him at the end being the center point, holding all of the multiversal threads together, him sitting on the golden throne, him becoming the Time Lord Loki or God Loki, however you want to. There was a bunch of different names that people were given for that version of Loki. But him, grabbing the strands of time, sitting on that throne and allowing all those people to thrive, was amazing television. Let me look up the Loki people, because that's going to bother me right now. Loki cast. Here we go. So there we go. Morbius. So at the end, Morbius gets to go back and see his kids, but he's watching his kids. So that was a little bit unclear, but him being able to wrap up that storyline of him actually knowing what his life was like on the timeline. Super, super good writing right there. And then you have OB, Ouroboros. He was a fun character with the comedic relief while also providing the necessary answers to some of the questions that they had, him being one of the people who founded the TVA. And then you had Miss Minutes. Really, Miss Minutes had some weird moments in season 2, especially with Victor Timely. It got kind of weird. Okay. She wanted a real body, all that kind of stuff. I felt, and this is just me, I felt that Jonathan Majors as Victor Timely in Loki season 2 did exactly what he was supposed to do as Victor Timely. Okay. Victor Timely was not a Kang. He is a Kang variant, but he wasn't Kang at that point. He was Victor Timely, which he was playing this meek inventor who had knowledge of things that he shouldn't have had at the time. And I felt like he played that role very well. A lot of other people thought that the role of Victor Timely wasn't very well received or wasn't done properly or anything like that. But I felt it was done well. Especially his best work as Kang has always been He Who Remains in the Loki series. I didn't see him in Quantumania, but that wasn't well received. His Kang in Quantumania wasn't well received either. But I thought he did a great job in this one. Excuse me. And then just having Loki be the one to wrap up the Victor Timely, He Who Remains storyline and giving the MCU a jumping off point to start somewhere fresh. I feel it's really good, especially with everything that's happened to Jonathan Majors after the fact of Loki season 2. We don't have to get into that here. If you don't, if you know, you know. But I think that having Loki be the one to hold the multiverse together, He Who Remains being taken out of the picture, Victor Timely being taken out of the picture at the end of Loki season 2, like I said, gives us a good jumping off point to start a new story apart from Kang and maybe revisit the Kang storyline at a later date with a different actor. But Loki season 2, a great heart-wrenching season of television. I don't really want to talk about the things I didn't like in comic books because there was a lot not to like. Secret Invasion was bad. The Marvels were bad. Aquaman was bad. The Flash was bad. There's like all of these, and that's DC and Marvel had projects that came out in 2023 that were just bad. I'm going to touch on Aquaman real quick. Aquaman was a convoluted story. It was not great. The actors didn't. I feel like it was a huge step down from the first Aquaman. You got the legal troubles that Amber Heard went through. I believe was her name, with Johnny Depp, and her being allowed to still be in that movie after the fact, what I feel like was a huge misstep. The same thing goes with The Flash and Ezra Miller. Him being able to promote that movie and be as front-facing as he was in the promotion of that movie was a huge misstep by DC. So both of those movies had multitude of issues. Besides, they just in general, they weren't good movies. They had people in the cast that also brought negative publicity to those movies. So those two were not good. Secret Invasion was a convoluted story that ultimately has no place in the MCU. You can't connect it to, it was supposed to be connected to the Marvels movie in some way. That ended up not being the case. So why even watch it? You know, the Marvels was okay. It was just okay. And that's just not what we're looking for in our comic book stories from the MCU or from DC. Like, just, it was a lot of not great stuff this year. But I just want to touch on that quickly before we get back to some of my other things that I liked. And the animation DC animation is always going to be top tier. Always. They always have the best stories, the best movies, all that stuff. And coming out of that was The Adventures of Superman. It was a different take on Superman, which, if you know me, if you follow any of my social medias, I'm not a Superman fan. I don't like Superman. I think Superman is a very overrated character. I think his stories are very boring and very one-noted. He's the blue-eyed Boy Scout, as everybody knows. But I feel like in The Adventures of Superman animated show, it did a very good job of fleshing out Lois as a character, fleshing out Jimmy as a character, and also fleshing out Clark Kent as a character, not Superman. Fleshing out Clark Kent. The whole first season, a lot of it, the first half of the season is him navigating his life as Clark Kent while he's just getting his powers, which I think is very good. It's a very good direction that they took it in. The animation on it, I had problems with it in terms of some of the scenes looked unfinished. I've talked about that on YouTube video and other things like that. But the storyline for that show was very, very good, very well done. And I think that I'm looking forward to season 2. There was some multiversal things that happened in that show that I felt like were a little out of place, but like I said, I can get past that. And that show in particular was very, very good in terms of the reintroduction of Superman to a younger audience or a new audience who thought, me being one of them, thought that Superman, the character, had grown stale. So I'm glad that they did that. And then finally, in the world of DC, they did live action Titans. Season 4 is the last season. A lot of people don't watch this show, or I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this show, but Titans was a very well done live action version of Titans. It was very lightly CGI'd. And the Titans roster consists of Nightwing, Starfire, Beast Boy, Raven, and Superboy, I believe. And then there's other characters that come in and out, but season 4 in particular was really good. We get White Raven in that one. Beast Boy is exploring his powers a little bit more in that season. Starfire is exploring her powers more in that season. We don't get a lot of Nightwing, which is unfortunate, but I do think that the Titans show is very good for live action. It focused more on the storytelling aspect of the interpersonal relationships between the Titans, not necessarily the fights, which I thought was a good choice for a show that has not a great budget, because specifically with Raven, Beast Boy, and Starfire, those characters require a lot of special effects to really show their powers to their fullest extent. But I thought that them focusing more on the characters in terms of their development was a better use of their time and money in that show than anything else. So in 2023 overall, the comic book landscape was not very good in terms of the media, live action and movies and stuff. But the things that I listed were some of the things that I watched that I found that were very, very good to me. And hopefully you guys go back and watch some of these things so that you can kind of get more of a feel of what I was talking about, specifically Titans and The Adventures of Superman, because those are two shows that I feel like a lot of people didn't really talk about or know about. So I feel like if you guys will go back and watch those, you'll understand. But yeah, we're going to finish up the podcast here after this break, and then that'll be it for our first video podcast. So I'll see you guys on the other side. All right, so we're at the end of the podcast here. I want to take this time to thank a bunch of people, everybody who has downloaded and listened to the first 6 episodes of the audio only on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. Thank you. I appreciate it. We're still going to upload on those platforms, the audio version, but the video version is also going to be available on YouTube. We're going to be putting out clips. We're going to be doing all this stuff. And I want to give a special shout out to one of my mutuals on one of my socials. I don't know if he wants to have his name out there, but I do appreciate the advice that you gave me and everything that we talked about on our Discord call. Helped me to progress and to move this thing forward. So thank you for that. I also want to thank everybody who's been downloading. Again, it means a lot. This is what I want to do right here. I want to do podcasts. I want to be talking with you guys about the things that I love. And, every time I get a new download or a new subscriber or whatever it is, it just gives me that added motivation to keep going. My wife has been amazing, and supportive in helping me do all of these things. So I just want to give a shout out to her. That's who you guys hear on the outro. This has just been super awesome to do and to continue. And we're now going with the video. I'm hoping that you guys, it's received very well. Because this is a very nerve-wracking process to be sitting here on video by myself doing a podcast, and it's a lot different when you have to record it and do video versus when you do audio only. So hopefully you guys, this podcast is well received and we keep going and we keep growing, keep learning, because there's going to be no shortage of anime and comic news. And things to watch and consume. So if you guys want to find the podcast on YouTube, it's going to be Nerd Vibes Podcast on YouTube. We also have a Nerd Vibes TikTok page. It's going to be Nerd Vibes Pod on TikTok, something like that. And then you can also follow me on all my socials personally, which is going to be Armed Dark Mamba on all socials, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, all those things. Also, if you want to have some of these conversations or talk about anything that you heard in the podcast, if you want to do that in a live forum, I stream on Twitch on Sunday nights. We're going to be watching anime, and when more comic book shows and things of that nature, mostly animated stuff, comes out, we're going to be watching those on the stream as well. So if you guys want to have any conversations or have questions or anything like that, you guys can definitely hit me up during the Twitch stream. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is let me make sure I get the email right. So, once we get that going, you guys are going to be able to send me emails asking questions, and I'll answer those questions live on the podcast. We'll go through, I'll write them down, give you guys answers, and it's going to be Nerd Vibes Cast, all one word, Nerd Vibes Cast at gmail.com. Okay, Nerd Vibes Cast at gmail.com. Send in your questions. Any advice you might want to have, any character matchups, anything like that, send them to that email. I'll check those emails, and I'll answer them as soon as I can on the podcast. Okay, so that's going to be it for our first video episode today. I appreciate you guys listening, watching, subscribing, any of that. Leave a review, comments, likes, all that. So I'll see you guys on the next episode. Nerd Vibes Podcast. We're out. Thank you for listening to Nerd Vibes. We will see you guys next week.
It's a vibe.